Do you want to know one of the more frustrating aspects of real-side dream experiences? I'm sure everyone at some point has experienced this phenomena. Imagine watching a movie, and it is a movie that demands attention due to its quality. And then imagine the movie had no sound. So obviously, integral aspects of the plot will be lost to a severe degree, and the whole overall experience lessened as a result. It is this that can also be frustratingly experienced on the real side. Generally, the dream experiences will have all the elements we require to glean the insights that are being provided: the scene, the individuals and their respective roles, the script and the dialogue. But on occasion, we may find ourselves with an individual who is in communication with us, and we know, without a doubt, this is someone we really need to pay attention to, and yet we can't hear a word they are saying. These dreams are infrequent, but will occur, and usually they are with universal guides, and sometimes with Dwayne too. I've found that in these volume-lacking encounters, that naturally the inclination is to strain to hear, and focus more so on what is being said. But the moment you try and do this, the scene and the individual you are struggling to hear will fade away, and you will be somewhere else, and puzzling over why you could hear nothing, and what was indeed the point of such a conversation if it was unable to be received. Interestingly, when you fade from the scene with the guide, or whomever it may be, and you cease your struggling then to hear what words they utter, you may find yourself returning back to their presence. But your delight is soon dashed, as once again their lips are moving, but it's as though someone switched the mute button on their vocal cords. I have mentioned this on occasion on a few of the UK Skypes. Dwayne would inform me of the difficulty experienced with bringing dreams back through to the physical, and this is not only the recollection of them, but certain aspects of the content, such as the volume, it would seem. Evidently, our real selves heard and acknowledged everything that was said on whatever life level the dialogue took place, as much as it saw and experienced everything too. But the trick is to bring it back through to the personal little self, recollect it, and generally try to determine the demonstration through the obstructive filters of our literal created vehicles. Dwayne would refer to waking like a stone hitting the smooth clarity of the dream waters, distorting and obscuring the contents. And sometimes, depending on the personal self, it will block out a lot of the dream content, or maybe even the experience in its entirety. I have mentioned before how the trick is to maintain a state of being that is devoid of thought and emotion. In other words, that of being connected to your awareness on waking, in order to better facilitate dream recollection. So what about those pesky dreams where no words can be received? You remember the entire real-side experience in crystal clarity, but were unable to bring back to the physical the words of undoubted wisdom that would be awareness expanding for yourself. Yes, it would seem that perhaps the little self has intervened, and insisted that these words are not to be heard. Perhaps something beyond which it is willing to hear or accept at this stage. The personal self is very strong after millions of lifetimes, and does have a tendency to interject itself on our process of becoming more aware, thinking it knows best, etc. But as time has gone by, I've come to appreciate the mechanics of interaction on the higher life levels and the real universes beyond the physical. On the physical level, everything is very dense, intense, tightly packed, and we utilize, of course, our senses to interact and engage with others. But beyond the physical level, everything is far more malleable and fluid, and everything moves by thought and imagination. Also, communication is more along the lines of telepathy, on the life levels beyond the physical, and indeed encounters with individuals are not necessarily visual, but more impressions. It's a recognition of these life levels and the individuals you may find there. If this recognition and perceptual acuity is lacking and unpracticed, you will see nothing at all, or very little. And as I shared a little of my out-of-body astral projections and excursions of years gone by, how at first I was still attempting to perceive the astral with my physical eyes, and then my astral eyes would kick in. At first I would still be perceiving the physical world, the house from where I projected from, then a subtle shift in my perception, and my astral perception would allow me to see the astral level I was now in, and the house would fade away. It explains how ghosts, if very attached to the physical level, and are unpractised in perception beyond it, or even haven't considered anything beyond it, adamant that nothing in fact exists beyond the planet they spent their lifetime upon, that when they pass on, they are, yes, on the astral level generally, but are unable to perceive it, and so they still see the physical level. They will assume they are still alive in some cases, and be rather perturbed when strangers seem to now be living in their homes, For yes, they will see everything still on the physical, but not in fact have the physical vehicle anymore. They seem generally bound to a certain area, and generally this is the place that they have died. To move beyond it results in them also moving on to their next position. Interestingly, I found this with some of my astral excursions. It wasn't until I moved beyond my house and into the street that the physical level would fade away, and I'd be somewhere in the astral. Seems there is a boundary where the astral eyes will kick in automatically, were one to move beyond it from the place they projected from or passed over in. But not always the case either, as some individuals may be more stubborn in their beliefs to the extent that you could relocate them a zillion miles from their initial passing over point, and still they would perceive not a thing. So, if this applies to the eyes, in regards of what we can see or not, according to the extent by which we make the subtle perceptual shifts that are required to see the life levels we move through, then it follows it applies to all the senses. Beyond the physical, the senses of the physical body no longer apply. They no longer are available, and their function was only to decode the life level they are designed for and aligned with the physical. But it seems we are so attached to the senses that we still try to, at first, perceive the life levels beyond the physical with the physical senses we no longer have. But through imagination and intent, as the life levels beyond the physical respond more directly and instantaneously with these, we can still perceive the physical, despite not having the physical senses to do so. Such is the power of imagination and intent. So putting this all together, when we find ourselves in a scene with a guide and we can't hear them, it follows that we are still trying to discern their words with our physical ears, the way we are so accustomed to on the physical, and thus, when we strain harder to hear, to use our physical senses to perceive a level beyond what the physical senses are designed to perceive, we focus so much on the physical level as a result that it takes us out of alignment with the life level we were on, and then we find ourselves elsewhere. I would suggest the astral if we are still in the dream, as it is the next rung up from the physical, and where most will be in their dreams or on passing over, if the focus has been predominantly on the physical life level up until that point. Then we stop focusing on our physical senses, we let go, and may find ourselves back again on the life level we had departed from. Now we have allowed ourselves to return. So we ultimately have to learn to read these life levels, to perceive and recognize them. And we can't utilize the literal self or the senses, try as we might. It's more impressions that can only be gleaned once the emotions and thoughts, the personal self, has been placed aside. In more recent times, then, I can be with guides and individuals, and I am not actually visibly seeing them or audibly hearing them, and yet I knew who it was, and I received the information they were divulging to me, all through impressions. You know you are in the company of someone through the impressions of that individual in your presence, and the unique quality of their essence, in effect, will allow their identity to be known. Then you become familiar with the impression of them, and you get to recognize individuals this way, as much as you would recognize an individual on the physical level through the senses. The real you knows how to do this. It's just getting the personal created self out of the way to allow such impression-based interaction to take place. So, as you can imagine, it's not a constant. While we have the personal vehicles, and still are going through our process of becoming more aware, we switch back and forth between the various states of being. Our focus fluctuates until it is stabilized, and we become aware beings of real light, standing real and with the all-is. I had an experience with Rebazar a few weeks ago, just prior to waking. Again, I didn't see him visibly, but I knew it was him. He had his unique signature, and I had the impression of him. He was speaking to me. I heard no words, but the impression and sense of what he was conveying. And to reinforce the notion that this was a genuine encounter, which I think is important, not for the real self, but for the personal self more so, which needs encouragement, on waking, a large bird was cawing at my bedroom window. Again, I knew this was Rebazar. He was in the form of this large bird on the physical level, and then he took flight and flew away.